start with opening statements with Ms. Alman.
Good afternoon. Oh, hold on. Hello.
There you go. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming and staying for the Group 6 debate. I'm John Elizabeth Alaman, candidate for City Commission in Group 6. And I'm a native Floridian. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and then why I'm running. I'm a native Floridian. I was born in Tampa, raised in Sarasota. I attended the University of Florida where I got my degree in finance. And then my first job was with a company called Accenture in Atlanta. And I worked there for 4 years. I wanted to get back to Florida, so I took a job with a company called Ryder, which is a local Fortune 500 transportation and logistics company here in Miami. And I had been on a pleasure trip to Miami Beach and fell in love with the South Beach, the Art Deco architecture. And so this is where I chose to move. I actually had my first apartment here on 1211 Pennsylvania. That was 1994. And I worked at Ryder for 15 years in technology. My whole career is in information technology, software development. When I left Ryder, I was the group director of international IT. I had 70 technology professionals in 9 countries reporting to me, and I left there to be the chief information officer at Mastech, which at the time, it's much bigger now, was a $2 billion company over in the Gables. That being said, I had met my husband, JB, my first day of work at Ryder, and by the time I achieved the position of Chief Information Officer, which in my line of work is sort of the pinnacle job, I had 2 sons. I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old son. So at that time, I really wanted to focus on raising my family. And in fact, I found that difficult to do with a full-time career. So I semi-retired, but it didn't take me too long to get very involved with the PTA. And I became the PTA president at North Beach Elementary. And actually was honored to be the Miami-Dade County PTA President of the Year because of the real results that I was able to achieve there. So I decided really to run for commission because of the joy, because of the joy of bettering the community and contributing, and I hope to continue that.
Thank you, Ms. Alaman. Mr. Samuelin.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Samuelin, candidate in Group 6. Delighted to be with you. When we launched our campaign about 6 months ago, it was really clear what we were going to do. Put on my walking shoes with the love of my life, Laura, who's with us today, and we've walked for over 200 days. In fact, we set a Miami Beach record when 2,072 people signed our ballot petition to get on the ballot. What do we hear? We live in a beautiful place, a city that's grown really fast without the proper planning. We have major traffic problems, and we have flooding, which we're experiencing right now. And what you want is a voice. What I heard you say, a voice for residents that will get this stuff done. Let me tell you about me and why I think I can do it. I'm an engineer from Georgia Tech. I bring expertise and credibility to handle these complex problems. I've got my MBA from Wharton. When it comes to business and finance, how our money needs to be spent, I know my stuff. And I've seen our community from a lot of different places. As a chess tutor at Nautilus and Miami Beach High, on the board of Miami Beach United, helping to start the Alton Road Business Association. I was a consultant with the consulting firm Accenture, so you've heard that name again, and it was that consulting work that brought me back to South Florida in 2003. I bought my first home in Miami Beach in 2003, lived in 3 different homes on the beach, and now we live on the Venetian Islands. So I am really excited to give back to this community and serve, and I'm running as someone that brings special expertise and will be a strong, independent voices. There's enough voices for special interests. We need a resident voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuelin. Group 6 is the only race that we don't have a candidate that lives in North Beach. So it seems that North Beach a lot of times seems like a foreign place to most of us. Ms. Alaman, if you were elected to the Miami Beach City Commission, how would you make sure that we continue to develop North Beach economically and culturally?
So by this time, I've knocked on 6,000 doors, and I've walked every block of North Beach. And I've also attended a number, to get up to speed, you're right, to spend more time in that neighborhood, I've attended a number of the North Beach Blue Ribbon panel meetings. That being said, I'm a mid-beacher. I live on 58th and Alton, and I do frequent the businesses on 71st Street and Collins Avenue. And that area has so much potential. The thing about North Beach is it has a real neighborly quality, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to stimulate growth for the businesses along, as I said, along Collins and in Town Center on 71st Street. And I believe, as a Mid-Beacher, that there's latent demand for those businesses in Mid-Beach. So if there were more restaurants and other types of small businesses that residents could enjoy, the Mid-Beach community, I believe, would travel north for that. And even more so with all of the traffic and lack of parking, which I'm sure we'll get to. So I would support the efforts to vitalize those business corridors as well as the residential redevelopment to make more space for workforce, young professionals, young families, and even more senior housing up there.
Thank you. Mr. Samuelson, what's the best way to bring businesses to North Beach?
The best way to bring businesses to North Beach involves a couple different things. First, we need to have a business-friendly environment. We need to be a good place to do business. Second, we need to recruit. We need to say we're open for business. And third, we need to support our local businesses. Efforts like the Alton Road Business Association, where we brought businesses together, I think can be helpful. And we need to support and cultivate, especially the businesses that have been with us so long. One of the things that really pulls at me is to see these businesses have been here forever, and now they're closing up shop. As a business executive, someone that is intimately familiar with the workings of business, I think I can really help.
Especially for Miami Beach residents, historic preservation in the city is a controversial issue. It's been an issue that has arisen multiple times in multiple forms across the city. Ms. Alamand, what's the best way to balance development and historic preservation?
So I mentioned that one of the reasons that I moved here in the first place was because of the Art Deco, beautiful, iconic look of our city. We have to hold on to that in all parts of our city, whether it's South Beach, Mid Beach, North Beach. There's unique elements. One thing that I think as we go forward and we figure out how to keep our eye on historic preservation and simultaneously address sea level rise is that right now all of our protections are really citywide. And I think we need to begin to recognize that districts within our community are quite different from each other and have different needs. So Mid-Beach residential versus South Beach Art Deco versus MIMO in North Beach probably need a different set of codes and regulations. I'm in favor on the residential piece of establishing a residential preservation strategy because, in my opinion, regular homeowners are going to be faced in the next 20 to 40 years with deciding how on their own personal home they're going to address sea level rise. And I think the city has an obligation to help them with that.
Mr. Samuelson, same question.
Preservation is the heart and soul of Miami Beach. South Beach and the Ocean Drive Art Deco was a huge, huge success and driver for us. Let me touch on two things. First, from a residential perspective and a commercial perspective. On the residential side, we need to do a better job at preserving our historic homes and neighborhoods. We've had some 80 homes demolished over the last couple of years. How do we do it? First, we need to provide greater incentives to preserve historic homes. Second, we need less incentives for the big McMansions. Third, we need to have more green space and landscaping so homes fit into the neighborhoods. And then finally, what we need to do, if a home's going to be demolished, we need to follow the recommendation of our city administration, which was not adopted, to have more formal demolition procedures. Commercial districts. If we have a historic district, we need to move very carefully. So I'll just take this opportunity to touch on one on the table. It's on the ballot, Ocean Terrace. I am a strong supporter of responsible development in North Beach. But Ocean Terrace is in a local and national historic district. I do not believe the current proposal to increase FAR is appropriate. And William Carey, our former planning director, has come out and said we may lose our historic designation if we move forward. So we need to tread very gently in historic areas, and Ocean Terrace is probably the best example that I can give where I have a very clear point of view of what we should and what we shouldn't do.
Ms. Alman, do you agree with Mr. Samuel that we shouldn't increase the floor area ratio in historic districts?
Well, let's talk about the Ocean Terrace project for a moment, because that strip has avoided any sort of investment or development for several decades. And now we have an investor that's willing to serve as a catalyst that ultimately could be the catalyst for revitalizing North Beach. And the developer that they've selected is one that has a track record in our city. The developer, Sandor Scher, has done the Raleigh, the Shelbourne, Soho House, and others. So this is a developer that we've seen his work, and he's got a track record of holding on to the beautiful historical elements. And then this project has agreed to do so with the Days Inn and the building that's right next to it. So I know that some people are concerned with the FAR increase. In general, I'm also against FAR increases, and I have a bias to not increase density. There are some elements of this project which actually decrease density with the current rules. It could be developed at 100 units per acre, and they're going to do 50 units per acre. So that's actually less. There is a tower. It's not as tall as the tower that's in place, but what I find more compelling is that the residents that I've spoken to in North Beach, they want it. And I'm talking about the Normandy homeowners, Normandy Sud, Altos Del Mar homeowners. They've come out publicly in support of this project. The most important thing is that it will go in front of the voters so that the voters can decide. So it's not so much what is my own opinion on this, but what will the voters decide. But I will tell you that personally I'll vote for it because it is a beautiful project that can serve as a catalyst for vitalizing Town Center and Collins in North Beach.
Mr. Samuel, can you respond to Ms. Alaman on the idea of Ocean Terrace being the best possible way and a good way to increase economic development in North Beach?
So we definitely want to improve economic development in North Beach, and we do want to do it in a responsible way that is good for the residents that are there. I do agree that some development across Town Center and certainly on Ocean Terrace, maybe even some activity in the West Lots should be looked at. But we need to balance with these historic districts. We need to balance with the residents and what they truly want. So I think we can do this within the current zoning codes. It's important to realize this is going back to 1997, Save Miami Beach precedent, that we would not have floor area ratio increases like this. So again, I will be voting no on that item, and I think we can get development. And I think part of that development should be coming from the master planner that the city engaged. Let's look at the timing a little bit. We've engaged a master planner. We're going to spend a few $100,000, and at the same time, we have a separate proposal that's moving forward. Some have said, well, we don't need the master planner. I'd say, well, then let's save the residents the $100,000.
Can everyone please silence their phones just to make sure we don't have... An important issue for residents is the quality of life in Miami Beach. Especially for residents with children, parks and recreation are extremely important. And from fiscal year 2011 to 2014, we saw our parks and recreation budget decrease every single year. Ms. Alaman, if you were elected to Miami Beach City Commission, how would you change our city budget to make sure that we increase funding for parks and recreation?
Thank you. As a mom of two boys, I've got one at North Beach Elementary and a middle schooler who's a guitarist at the Arts Charter. For the last 3 years, I've been running the after-school enrichments program at North Beach Elementary, which has 75 different classes from language to sports to the arts to the sciences and more. So I do know a little bit about the programming for youth. In the city of Miami Beach, we can get better around Parks and Rec. The youth programming, in some cases, have gotten much better. Some of the sports are much better, but there's still room for improvement. And I also would like to see the city of Miami Beach complement what Miami-Dade County Public Schools is doing with the curriculum. So there's two pieces that I think we really could do better. One is in what's called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. The school system hasn't really embraced that, and that's something that as a city, if we think that's important, we could do more. At North Beach, we brought in robotics, we brought in structural engineering, mechanical engineering, different software programming, different classes to get the kids exposed to science, science and math and technology. It's predicted that by the year 2020, there will be 1 million more IT jobs than people to fill them. And so I think as a community, we need to, we can't wait for the school district to get going on this, and that's something that we could add. The other thing is Spanish language. All of our schools in Miami Beach are at our National Baccalaureate, and the students are all learning Spanish. But the curriculum is about full linguistic mastery. And unfortunately, what we're losing is just the ability for basic conversational speech in Spanish. And so I'd like to see us complement what's happening there in the schools with Spanish language as well.
Mr. Samuel, same question. How can we increase, and what's the best way to increase funding for education in the city of Miami Beach?
Education or parks?
Both.
Okay, well, all right, great. So let me talk about parks first, and then we can touch on education. Just a point of information on parks. I do believe some of the responsibility for parks was transferred to public works, so we'll have to double check the numbers. I'm not sure it was that big a decline. We'd have to look into that a little bit. But I think parks are very, very important. What do we need to do with our parks? We need to find money in places that is being spent that is not well done. We have a budget of about $500 million. This year, 2,050 employees. I have a feeling, and in the last discussion we heard some areas where we might save a little money and put more into our parks. When we put more into our parks, let's activate our parks. Let's develop programming. I look at Collins Park here. There's so much more that we could be doing. I support the administration's approach to bring park rangers, so we have people watching it as well. Let's shift to education, because I haven't heard the gavel yet, so I think I'm doing okay. On education, as we all know, that's the primary responsibility of the school board. However, I do believe there's an important role for the city. The city's role is when there's a gap and a need that our citizens need, and if the school board is not delivering up to the compact, that is the formal agreement we have with Miami-Dade Public Schools, if they're not living into it, we can't get them to do it, then we have to step in. And whether it's pre-K, whether it's supplemental programs, we live in a city with the budgets we have, we can find the money to do the right thing. And education is critical. Education is a key quality of life driver. Many of us may not have children in the schools, but it drives the type of people that come to our neighborhood. I was fortunate to be the first one in my family to go to college. I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have that public school education. I will do everything I can for parks and education.
An additional quality of life for residents issue is Rebecca Towers. A lot of low-income seniors in the city of Miami Beach live there, and the idea of tearing it down is one that's controversial among many. Ms. Alban, what is your opinion on the Rebecca Towers and whether we should keep them or get rid of them?
It's an appalling concept to think about taking down Rebecca Towers. I would never support that. In fact, I know that the lists for the senior centers are really quite long. And so I'm hoping during my tenure as commissioner, if I should be so lucky as to be elected, that we could actually add senior housing. I think we've got the room for it. In addition to that, at the senior centers, the seniors need to be treated really as customers there. They need to have parking access for their family and their friends to come visit them. Some of the centers, they are allowed only very short time to have their visitors park, and it's not enough for a real visit. At some of the senior centers also, just the entry is not as good as it could be. For example, at Villa Marti, they don't have a call box system. So for the senior citizens, when my husband and I were there knocking on doors, there was an elderly woman who had not had her, sorry, it makes me emotional to say this, she had not had her food delivery for 4 days. And it is because she had injured her leg, she could not walk with her walker. There's no buzzer system at the building, so the guy who was bringing her box of food couldn't get in, and she couldn't stand out there all day waiting to try to catch him. So for 4 days, she didn't get her food delivery. That's totally unacceptable, and not the way we want our seniors to be treated in Miami Beach.
Mr. Samuel, what policy solutions can the city of Miami Beach make sure that rent prices can be decreased for low-income residents?
First off, just to underline, I think what's going on at Rebecca Towers is troubling. That is something we all should be concerned about, and I will fight hard for the residents and the seniors in that facility. Now, in terms of low-income or mixed moderate-income housing, as someone who has spent his career in the business world, it really does come down to incentives. The role of the city is to deliver its services and then make it attractive for developers who want to earn money to do lower and mixed income housing. What do incentives look like? There's two forms. There's either economic or zoning. Economic, we provide them financial incentives that make it a better deal for them to make housing for people at various levels of the income stream, which I strongly support. Otherwise, we're going to end up with just a home for the affluent. Zoning incentives. If you might have certain requirements for height, you might have certain requirements for density, you say add on a little more, but that little more has got to be for this group of people that needs your help. That's a good role for city government. That's what we'll do.
Thank you. As many of us saw last week, flooding is a huge issue in Miami Beach. A lot of infrastructures are really developed to combat it. Ms. Alamon, what are policy solutions we need to take to make sure that we decrease flooding in the city?
Okay. Flooding has to be the major issue, and as was discussed earlier, we are just beginning our long-term plan to address flooding with the installation of the pumps and the drainage. We need to stay committed to that. And it's frustrating because it does cause, because of the construction, it causes traffic and congestion issues that are temporary but very painful at different parts of the city. We have to stay dedicated to that plan anyway. Pumps alone aren't enough, of course. So we need to improve our seawall around our borders. Some of that's public, some of it's private. So I believe that we need to incent private property owners to be proactive about their seawall improvements so that we get to the finish line sooner, if you will, about having an impervious seawall that doesn't have points of failure. And in general, I'm in favor of providing incentives for property owners to address sea level rise and LEED and windstorm mitigation and these types of things.
Mr. Samuel, same question.
Flooding and sea level rise is a critical issue. We're experiencing the king tides. We live at ground zero. There's one thing you should be thinking about in this election: who can best get us to where we need to go? Let's talk about a couple things. First, we need a comprehensive approach. We need an integrated plan that looks at our streets and also the zoning and how we're going to build buildings and where we should and shouldn't build buildings. Second, we need financial resiliency. We need the money when these bad things happen that we're prepared. As sea levels rise, the risk of catastrophic events will increase. We need to have the proper risk management and insurance in place to do it. Third, we need the public works, and you specifically asked about pumps. Pumps are a good first step in the short term. The concern I have about the pumps at this moment in time is a couple. One is to make sure that we have thoughtful, detailed plans of how it's budgeted to be $400 million is really thought through and bookended and laid out so that we're not talking about billions to go. But second, I do have some concerns on the environmental side. What happens is sand gets in. You've got particles of sand literally getting in. And of course we have litter in the streets because we have litter problems on the beach. And then some of that is captured in the pump. A little technical here, but there's a vortex. It captures some of it, but it ain't capturing all of it. And so we are now at risk with what's going to Biscayne Bay. So one of the first things I'd like to do is understand what can we do to make that better? How do we approach that? Because I think that's a critical area given the importance tourism has and obviously the environmental sensitivity of Biscayne Bay and our waters. As a degreed engineer, I have the expertise and I'll have the credibility to talk with the engineering folks and the scientists about what needs to be done.
Ms. Olivan, what ambiguities in the city code can we change to make sure that we have better city enforcement of different pollution and environmental concerns?
So everything that is currently going into the bay through the pumps was going into the bay before. The difference is that it's going out in fewer places. And so where we had 300 outflows around the city, now we're consolidating 10 to 20 in through a pump. And all of the solid material, most of the solid material, not little bits, is actually being extracted by the pump and being disposed of. That's good, that's better. It's just not perfect. And the reason it's not perfect is we're still leaving in the liquid pollutants, bacteria, pesticides and fertilizers and oil and everything else that was going in the bay. We're not cleaning the water. So that is something that we could consider. But right now, we need to keep the streets dry, and our priority has to be on continuing forward with the pumps. The other thing about the pumps is that there's a velocity, the water's being forced out into the bay, and just that velocity and the disruption of sediments is causing some problems. So I'm a sailor's daughter and a native Floridian. Our waters and the quality of them and the cleanliness and our responsibility for the sea's creatures, these are important things that we have to pay attention to and incorporate into our policy. It's difficult when you are doing something for the first time. It's hard to be perfect right out of the gate. And I think that we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but continuous improvement is definitely something that we need to try to achieve, and that needs to consist of looking at continuous improvement in terms of our impact to the natural habitat, the engineering, and all of that. But we still need to stay the course on the flood control. Thank you.
Now, probably one of the most prejudiced concerns for residents is traffic and congestion. It's a huge issue for many. Forbes even found in late 2014 that Miami Beach has one of the worst traffic situations in the entire state of Florida. Mr. Samuelin, how would you make sure that we decrease congestion in the city if elected to the Miami Beach City Commission?
As I talked to over 2,000 residents, this is the number one concern we have. To a point, some people say they don't want to even come to Miami Beach, and some people are trying to leave, and it's impacting our tourist economy. So it's a great question, Ben. What do we do? 3 thoughts. First, don't make the problem worse. Stop building big high-rises. There's no room for people. Why would we be doing that? Doesn't make any sense at all. We need to rein in overdevelopment. And part of reining that in, frankly, is limiting the power of special interest. Number 2, we need to do a better job with our infrastructure projects. I support the efforts to put in the pumps done environmentally friendly, and we need to upgrade our streets, but we need to do a better job at planning it. We need to plan it better, we need to sequence it better, we need to communicate it better. Finally, we need to do a much better job at moving people around the beach. I'm proud of the work I did at the Alton Road Business Association, getting that trolley running around Alton West, 30,000 passenger rides. We need to look for other public transit options, whether it's dedicated buses, whether it is going to be a streetcar system. I'm a big believer in that. At the same time, we don't have enough room for all the cars. We need to shift to a multimodal world where bikes, pedestrians, buses, and cars can all coexist.
Ms. Olivan, do you think that public transportation is one of the best ways to solve the congestion problems? And if so, what's the best way to implement it?
Yeah, we are way behind on our mass transit infrastructure. So my ultimate vision definitely includes a rail link from Miami International and downtown to Miami Beach think that's a must, and once people get here, there needs to be adequate, adequate mass transit within our city that's pervasive, that has excellent schedules and is on time. And so the trolleys are great, and they help. We need to connect them throughout the city, through Mid-Beach. Not just Collins, which is fantastic, and I also like the idea of westbound 41st, but also, Alton and Prairie. And I really believe that the Mid-Beach community will use those trolleys. Right now, parents are driving their kids to school, and we have these strange flash traffic events around the schools that end up pulling police force there for extra monitoring. So I think there's a lot of things that are going to get better when we have good mass transit.
Mr. Samuelin, an additional controversial issue is the idea of developing different places like Watson Island. From the audience, what is your opinion on the Watson Island development?
I strongly oppose. This is a horrific idea. The MacArthur Causeway is broke already. We barely can move back and forth. We have no public transit options in place. And then to overlay hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail, commercial, craziness. So what we need to do is fight that. Obviously, the Watson Island project is on the Miami side. It is not focused in our jurisdiction. I support the administration's effort to do a traffic study and put some facts and data to what we all know, that that's going to be a big, big problem. And I also support the administration's effort to try and find a way to mitigate the adverse impact that that would have on us. We do have some legal options, and ultimately there is strong incentive in Florida law for cities to have mediation and to broker an agreement. So I will fight hard with it. I will work closely with the current commissioners who are trying to do it because I think it's the right thing. No on Watson Island.
Ms. Elamont, do you concur with Mr. Samuelin that we need to oppose Watson Island development?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we need to oppose Watson Island. We need to do everything that we can to prevent that project from happening. The other thing I wanted to mention about traffic is, I believe that we have a workforce that's coming from Miami to Miami Beach, and you see it if you're out early, that there are around all the construction projects. The public parking lots are filled up with construction workers, which is a detriment for both residents and for visitors. So I would like to see us start to require, starting with at least large private and city construction projects, to require that developers provide workforce shuttles.
Mr. Samuelin, are large capital investments in public transportation and different congestion solutions fiscally sustainable for the city of Miami Beach?
They are. They are for a few reasons. First, they can pay for themselves in terms of the demand that it brings for development and the demand in terms of tourism, so they can generate revenue that way. Second, we can seek funds from the county, from the state, from federal sources. Third, as we've talked about, we're spending $500 million a year. Any enterprise I ever looked at, and this was my profession, at a startup, people would look and say there's obviously some things we could do a little faster, better, and cheaper. So that's a source of funding as well. And then finally, we can explore private-public partnerships. This is a great way to move forward. We, as citizens, have a vision. Our government wants to make it happen, but we know the private enterprises can get it done. So-called P3, public-private partnership, could be a great way to go on mass transit.
Ms. Alamont, same question. How can we make sure that fiscally sustainable development of congestion solutions is effective?
So I mentioned earlier that in my professional career, I worked for Ryder, which is a Fortune 500 company, and also Mastech. In my career in IT, what I would do for a living is work to define infrastructure, in this case, technology infrastructure projects. And we have a concept we call total cost of ownership, which is when you look at a project, you don't just look at what is it going to take me to initially set up this new infrastructure, but what am I going to have to live with year after year in terms of ongoing maintenance and operating costs. So whenever we look at any project that we're doing in the city, we need to have this sort of total cost of ownership approach. It's true that for these large infrastructure projects, we're going to need to look not only for city funding, state and federal funding. I actually have a track record right here in the city of Miami Beach of working on a public-private partnership in terms of when I was the PTA president at North Beach Elementary. I was able to get Miami-Dade County Public Schools to agree to fund 50% of the new PE field at North Beach Elementary. So the PTA president, we came up with half of that $500,000 project and convinced the county school district to come up with the other half. So this is a model that I'm experienced with, and it just would be, you know, on a larger platform for the city. But yeah.
An additional issue that Miami Beach residents will be voting on this coming November is the idea of a convention center hotel. Mr. Samuelin, are you in support or are you against the convention center hotel being 30 stories in Miami Beach?
Great question. So just a point of information, I believe that's been pushed back. So now we are going to vote, but it's not going to happen until March. So we're going to have a little more time to digest what's going on. In a word, yes, I support a convention center hotel. Tourism and conventions do a great deal for Miami Beach residents. Those beds in the heads bring money that we use to provide for our fire, for our parks, for education. So there's goodness there. We're about to spend $500 million to refresh our convention center, and I think that's a good idea. But the benefit of that comes with a hotel, and a hotel that allows visitors to come and stay for longer times. That means more conventions, more doctors, more lawyers who stay for multiple days, less shows where people come in and out. So as this project moves forward, and obviously a lot's going to happen between now and March because the date has been pushed back, I want to make sure that we are going to bring those right shows. I want to make sure we change our booking policy to do it. And I want to make sure the traffic studies show that we can make that pay off. But a convention center hotel is the right way to go.
Ms. Almond, same question. Are you in support of a convention center hotel in Miami Beach?
Yes, I am in support of it. First of all, renovating the convention center makes tremendous sense. Having a good, strong, healthy convention business allows you to pull in off-peak demand for our restaurants, for our hotels, so that makes sense. I've attended hundreds of conventions in my career, and I can tell you that as a woman traveling alone, I definitely would want a hotel attached to the convention because it's, you know, navigating a city that you're not familiar with, concerns of safety. I think those are important issues, but also to validate my thinking, I did meet with one of our Miami Beach customers, one of my supporters, a guy named Manny Benzina, who founded the Emerge Americas Technology Conference and holds that at the Miami Beach Convention Center. And he said as well, it's absolutely mandatory. And he described for me at the most recent Emerge conference that for 4 blocks around the entire convention center, there was no parking and it was completely congested. So if you think about the people that work a convention having to place their large placards and have their, you know, little gifts and squeezy balls and all of their paper material, lugging that back and forth from their hotel rooms, it makes much more practical, pragmatic sense to have a hotel attached. And of course, the city has heard from their convention experts that in order to attract the kinds of conventions that we're looking for, which are not the drive-in kind, but the fly-in kind, that it's mandatory. So I support that. In terms of the placement of the hotel, we have really 2 choices. One of them is, as was described earlier, in the parking lot that's beside the convention center, a lower, large block building, or a taller, slimline building behind the Jackie Gleason. Personally, I favor the taller building. Not because I love tall buildings, but I love the idea of a 6-acre green park right beside the convention center connecting to Lincoln Road. I think that would be an incredible thing for our community.
Mr. Samuelin, do we have question from the audience, do we have the commercial infrastructure to continue building a convention center hotel that has the potential to bring in many more conventions?
The commercial?
Yeah, do we have the restaurants, the tourism industry, the necessary facilities to bring in that many more people?
The short answer is yes. In fact, I think that's an upside for the convention center. We're about to spend a bunch of money, and if you're watching a theme here, we have a budget of $300 million. We heard about 400 in the pumps, and here comes another 500. There's a lot of money flying around. We've got to make sure that we get this all right. And what I would say is, the prospect of the hotel bringing these spenders, if you will, is goodness for our local business. That will help our businesses. So I think that we absolutely have the infrastructure. The great thing about the free market, if there's demand and these people want to shop or they want to go to a cafe, there will be places for them. So I actually think it's a very positive aspect of the Convention Center Hotel.
Ms. Almond, what would be the impact of the convention center on traffic in South Beach?
Well, with the size of the investment that we're making in the convention center, we need to think long-term. So when we think about the traffic and congestion, you know, we have to go forward with the right plans for mass transit, like we talked about. Pervasive schedules, or for trolleys, for buses, water taxis, the rail, Uber, all of that. You know, we need to be very, very open to new ideas for public transportation and mass transit. I don't believe that having an attached hotel will be a driver of traffic for the convention center. In fact, I think it's the opposite, because if all the convention goers are able to walk from their hotel to the convention and back, then that's fewer cars on the road, it's fewer Uber rides, fewer taxi rides to get from here to there. So I don't buy into the argument that having an attached hotel is going to drive any sort of extra congestion around the convention center.
Now in reverse order, we're going to be having closing statements. So Mr. Samuelin.
Thank you, Ben, and I want to thank Teens for Teens, our organizers, a great group, some friendly faces that I know very well. I want to thank you all for spending some of your Saturday afternoon. They always say we have educated voters here, and this group really represents it. I want to come back to why am I actually running. I love it here, and I want to give back. I've been fortunate in my life to get some things right, work hard, and maybe be at the right place at the right time, and now I have the opportunity to do that and help the people here in Miami Beach. I know I can do a good job. As you think about these issues, these are big issues. Traffic, flooding, ground zero for sea level. My background as an industrial engineer from Georgia Tech, very comfortable talking technical with the scientific folks, and an MBA from Wharton, where I'll roll my sleeves up just like Commissioner Whitehorn used to do for the budgets, I think can really, really help. I'm running a positive grassroots campaign. My door is always open to hear from people. What I came to learn is you wanted a voice on the commission. You wanted someone that would put residents first. I guarantee you, for the business interest and lobbyist developers, they have plenty of voices. I'm a businessman, I'm okay with all of that, but they've got their own voices. We need a go-to for the residents, and I will be that person for you. As I saw the influence of special interests, I made a decision not to take money for them. No money from lobbyists, vendors, or PACs, or any of that stuff. And so I've raised money from about 300 folks, over half here in Dade County, and I'm self-funding. Why? Because it's important. I want to be beholden to no one. I'll be your full-time commissioner, I'll be there when you call me, and I'm going to donate my salary to the children and senior programs to give back more to the community. I ask for your vote when it comes that time, and they're coming real soon.
Ms. Almond.
Thank you all so much for coming and spending your afternoon and giving us a chance to, you know, make our case. I've been a resident in the city of Miami Beach, as I told you, for 21 years, and I'm raising my family here. I have got deep roots and ties to this community. And not only that, I have a solid track record professionally, with 15 years in transportation and logistics at Ryder, and 25 years in technology. These are absolutely the professional skills that are appropriate for the problems that we're facing now. But in addition to that, I have 6 years of track record working to improve our public schools. And having been awarded PTA President of the Year, I think demonstrates that I can work with people to reach common goals, not only from a command and control standpoint, but also from an inspire and motivate standpoint. As far as independence goes, I've received endorsement from Commissioner Michael Rico, Commissioner Joy Malakoff, County Commissioner Bruno Barreiro. I've received the endorsement of our Miami Beach firefighters, our local police union, SAVE, and the AFL-CIO. These are all independent endorsers who spent time assessing the candidates in Group 6 and unanimously endorsed me as the best, most qualified candidate in Group 6. And so I hope that you will make your own assessment, talk to your friends, and listen to that. But I truly hope that you'll vote for me to work hard for you and the rest of the city of Miami Beach. And vote for me, number 50 on your ballot, Group 6, John Elizabeth Alaman. Thanks so much.
I'd like to thank our candidates in Group 6 so much for coming. I'd like to thank all of you so much for coming. It's a great way to make sure that our residents are informed voters, and I'm very happy to have the conclusion of these debates. Thank you all once again, and I hope you all have a great Saturday.